So this is 12.1 under committee business. We have taking the Strong Towns approach in Medicine Hat. Our sponsor is Development and Infrastructure Committee. We have Sean Champagne, Senior Planner, here to provide a presentation to us, and I will turn the torch over to you.
Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me here this evening. I'm very happy to be here to provide this update to you. Just as a short summary of my presentation tonight, what I want to do is provide first a quick little concise summary of some aspects of the Strong Towns approach. I want to share 3 examples of how we implemented that throughout this year. I'm going to outline 3 of the sessions that took place at the last in-person event that took place here at the Esplanade in November of 2023, and also share 3 outcomes from those presentations, provide a little sneak peek of some things that we're working on in the near future, and wrap up with a great conclusion to our first year, just showcasing how successful we've been throughout this program. So I'll jump right into it. It's really difficult to summarize a book and a website and an academy in just a few points. If I needed to do so, as I will here, I would do it in this way. So Strong Towns essentially establishes that the way we've been growing as a city, and these are all North American cities throughout North America, is fiscally unsustainable, essentially meaning that our liabilities, like our infrastructure liabilities, are exceeding the revenues that we can generate. They tend to favor small bets, so pilot projects, for example, continual refinement over large capital-intensive projects. And they place an emphasis on providing services to our residents in a way that they're actually being used. So putting our residents first, putting people first. So I want to share 3 examples of ways that this Strong Towns approach has been put into action. Before I even begin, I want to make very clear that these aren't things that Strong Towns came in and told us, you have problem A, so you should implement solution A, and here's problem B. These are all solutions that have come from city staff who have participated in these projects or in this community action lab. So they've learned things and they found ways to implement this work in their day-to-day. So first is a really great example that really touches on the effect on our bottom line. And this is work that was done by our environmental utilities department. So they're undergoing multiple sewer and water main rehabilitation projects. And a lot of these save us a lot of money. So the first is using some innovative design choices. They completely abandoned an entire section of sewer line up in Crescent Heights, about 1.2 kilometers of that. These cost approximately $15 a year per meter to maintain. So this represents a savings of over $20,000 a year, every single year in perpetuity. The second example is actually pretty mind-boggling. So also by our EU department, they've repurposed 130 meters of high-pressure water supply line that was feeding fire hydrants downtown, and they're repurposing them to serve businesses downtown rather than installing a new line. So at a cost of about $8,500 linear meter for a brand new line, this represents a savings of over $1 million. So just some of this innovative thinking has a real big effect on our bottom line. And this comes from a team, Sandra Plank, the manager at Environmental Utilities, is one of our most keen members of the Strong Towns Action Team. So her and her team did some great work here. In terms of small bets and continual refinement. So we found out in 2023 that the fall trade show that's generally hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, there we go, thank you, was canceled. And we have a lot of municipal projects that are in the works, so we couldn't just not engage the public. All of these require a lot of engagement. So it wouldn't be effective for all of these different departments to organize their own independent public engagement sessions. So in partnership with our corporate communications department, they organized the very first city-led open house that took place in November 2023, right here in City Hall. So 7 separate booths. It took place over 4 hours right here in City Hall. They did some marketing on Facebook. We printed some sandwich boards in-house and placed them outside to kind of promote the event, all at a cost of some pool house coffee, some snacks, and that was pretty much it. So they've now organized and hosted a second event that took place in a larger venue at the Esplanade. More topics being presented, more and more people showing up, and we're starting to see a lot of the same familiar faces coming back to find out, well, what's going on next? And they can talk to several city staff members and find out about multiple city projects. So that was 2.0. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come up with next. What's going to be the next open house 3.0? Again, just continuously refining. This next example here is fascinating as well. So this was a partnership with our Parks and Recreation Department and the school board. So a resident who's also a member of the public school board approached Parks and Recreation with an idea to establish some intentional programming in our parks. So she noticed we have no shortage of park space, lots of them with playground equipment and lots of great equipment, but very often underutilized. So her suggestion was this free play program hosted in parks throughout the city. So this intentional programming that brings residents together. It takes about 30 minutes to set up their equipment, 30 minutes to take down, and they only needed about $3,000 to buy all of the equipment and a little bit of help along the way. I encourage everyone to check out the Medicine Hat Free Play Facebook page. They have hundreds of photos, just like this one here, of families, children, their parents, grandparents, all participating in this. And the best part is we didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money on something, more equipment that's just going to further increase our infrastructure debt liabilities. So Strong Towns wrote a very great article on this initiative, and I just shared a screenshot with that of that on the screen here in my presentation. I encourage everyone to go read that article because it's fascinating. Next, I want to share some highlights from the third and final Yeah.
There we go. You're good. Rondi looks good. Rondi got you.
My goodness, spoilers. Okay. So I want to share some highlights from the last Community Action Lab public presentation that took place here in Medicine Hat back in November. So the first was a public presentation called Escaping the Housing Trap. So this public presentation is available on YouTube for anyone who wasn't able to attend. They can watch the presentation. So in this presentation, Chuck Marone, the founder and president of Strong Towns, shared a little bit of a history of the housing in North America. So he talks about the Great Depression, fast growth, subprime loans, the housing bubbles, things of that nature. And the entire second half of his presentation addresses the following two questions. How do we make housing more affordable in our community? And how do we create more affordable housing in our community? And those aren't the same question. So his position that he shared is that we're quite powerless in trying to resolve the first question. So these are challenges that are controlled by forces that are outside of municipal government's control. So we're talking about things like rising interest rates, increased cost of living, decisions being made by central banks, but he outlined some of the potential solutions to addressing that second question. So he introduced some concepts such as allowing the next increment of growth by right. So this is the concept from his book that no neighborhood should experience radical change, but no neighborhood should be exempt from change. So just a very timely topic given some of the conversations that took place today. Lowering the bar of entry into the development game. So this is how can we accommodate things like accessory apartments, backyard suites, starter homes, things of that nature. How can we fix finance for small development? So again, very timely. How can we provide incentives that render smaller developments profitable? talked about this concept of pre-approved plans, which I'll address a little bit further along in my presentation, and evaluating value per hectare when we're reviewing development and rezoning proposals. And again, we've seen many examples of that taking place tonight when we're sharing updates in terms of things like rezonings and development proposals. And if some of these items sound familiar, many of them formed part of the initiatives that we developed as part of our application to the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund grant. So I won't dive into those specific details right now. I will a little bit later, but I will say this, in terms of the initiatives that we included within this grant application, we took the Strong Towns approach when we were developing those initiatives. So that means two things. These initiatives don't result in further infrastructure debt liabilities for us as a city. And secondly, many of them, if not all of them, can be implemented whether we receive the grant or not. So that just renders us as a city a lot more resilient. We're not relying on these funds and it's a make or break deal. Many of these things we can pursue regardless. So a second workshop that took place at the public event was this city staff workshop. We structured this workshop much like our action team meeting. So all city staff were given an opportunity to tackle a real struggle in our community using the Strong Towns approach. So again, the Strong Towns approach is what I've outlined here. So this is this concept of humbly observing where people in our community struggle, asking the question, what is the next smallest thing we can do right now to address that struggle? Do that thing right now and then repeat. Each table, all the conversations were happening pretty organically. People would just bring up for conversation a struggle that they face in the city, and they address things like energy consumption, unsightly properties, employee attractions, things of that nature. But one that really stood out to me was our downtown and this perception of a lack of parking. So a solution was proposed by one of our very own planners in our planning department, Sandra Moses, who recently moved to Medicine Hat, and she did have trouble finding parking in our downtown. And it's not because it wasn't there, it's just she didn't know how to find it. So the solution that they came up with at their table was this: as simple as it appears, why don't we list public parking on Google Maps? And so it's now there, it's live. And it seems very simple, it can seem very trivial. No one did this before. No one took the initiative to actually put that on there. So we did that in partnership, again, using our corporate Google account with corporate communications to do that. And following the last time I gave this presentation, we actually have, again, 2.0. So corporate communications noticed the work that we did on this and said, how can we take this a step further? And they've worked on developing this, and it's a handout that they will be able to give to downtown local business owners. This is information that they can put up in their window. This is something that they can share with their clients, they can share with their staff, just so it's very clear all of the parking that's available in our downtown. And so that's great. I love things like that. Next, the final session that took place at that public presentation was this transportation workshop. So this session was added because of the city's work on our transportation master plan. It was an introduction to the topics that are introduced in Chuck's second book. So this book is called Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, Transportation for a Strong Town. And this is a follow-up to the first Strong Towns book. And by the way, these are both available at the Medicine Hat Public Library. If anyone is interested in reading these, I implore you to go take out a copy. Very interesting stuff. So he introduced certain topics such as what is the difference between a street and a road? Those aren't the same things. And he introduces this concept of a strode. If you want to find out what that is, you should read the book. And it starts talking about and introducing concepts of what makes a great street and who is the person in our community who is best suited to lead a street design team. And it's probably not who you think. So again, read the book, really interesting. So what was the outcome of that? So Strong Towns graciously donated to us 15 copies of this book, and we had 15 people attend this transportation session. And these are members of our transit department, municipal works, parks and recreation, environmental utilities, planners. Rather than just giving them the book, we said, if I give you a copy of this book, would you join a book club if I start a book club? And I've never done that before, and they all agreed. So we all agreed to read a chapter a week, and we'd meet once a month, and we would talk about what we learned. And we met over 3 sessions, and these are all people that are involved in the transportation master plan. And not only just city employees, but also some of the consultants that are working on this jumped at the opportunity. So the outcome of this is city staff and external consultants meeting and talking about concepts that are maybe different from ways that we've conducted business in the past, and just talking about what are the pros, what are the cons, what can work here, what doesn't work here. It's just great because it's a different frame of mind, a way of looking at things through a different lens. So I love seeing these things implemented in this Hatters in Motion plan that's being led by our Municipal Works Department. So what's next? So I want to share some things that we're working on in planning and development services that kind of take the Strong Towns approach. So first are some of these initiatives from the Housing Accelerator Fund. So we've shared the 9 initiatives listed on the right, but I want to highlight 2 of them. So first is number 3. So this is implementing a strategy through zoning, through our land use bylaw, that allows for sensitive intensification. So what we've done here is we're proposing, and again, this was shared at the open house, a refresh to our land use bylaw, an amendment to our land use bylaw that would create 4 different residential districts rather than just 2 that we have today. So again, this allows us to just more incrementally grow and have a little bit more certainty about what can be developed next door. And if this sounds familiar, Chuck talked about this as well in his presentation when he talks about allowing the next increment of growth by right. Next is number 5. So reducing permit costs and timings for with pre-approved designs for missing middle housing. So we want to eventually have a catalog of backyard suites and duplexes and row houses, these permits that we can issue immediately because we've pre-approved them. This is a huge undertaking. So again, using the Strong Towns approach, we're breaking this down into smaller bets that we can implement and refine. So we're in the process of drafting a set of pre-approved garage permits. It's not going to do anything to address housing in our community, and it's not going to greatly and drastically increase the amount of tax revenue that we can generate, but it allows us as a department to test our procedures, to see how does this work when we receive or create a pre-approved plan and receive that application. Can we put that through our system? So when the day comes and we do eventually have this catalog of pre-approved plans for row housing, for example, we know that we can implement it quickly and easily. And finally, we're conducting fiscal analysis when we're undertaking our development reviews. And again, very timely, we've talked about that a few times tonight. Here on the right is a screenshot from an article that was written by Strong Towns on how much more financially productive historic areas of our cities can often be. And if these look familiar, that's because that's Sugar Daddy Cheesecake on the bottom. So again, this is a really interesting article that's using some local examples here in Medicine Hat. So what's next? Well, ultimately, that's up to everyone to decide. We've all participated in this Strong Towns Community Action Lab in one way or another. We've read the book, we've followed the lessons through the Strong Towns Academy, or we just shared some of the articles that we read online. There are principles within this book and within everything that we've learned that everyone can implement in their day-to-day lives. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what are some of the other things my colleagues at the city will come up with, or council, or residents. We have a very strong local conversation group that have taken to heart many of these principles, and they do excellent work. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the things that they work on. So finally, I promised a thrilling conclusion. we won't take the time to watch that video, but I think we all saw the video on our YouTube channel, Strong Towns Thinking. This was part of the Mayor's State of the City address. Again, I shared a little bit of a summary of the Strong Towns approach, and we shared some examples of ways that we've implemented that. So after we created that video, I forwarded that onto Strong Towns just for their information and say, hey, we created this thing. It's a little bit of a summary of the things that we've done. And this here's the reply that I received from Strong Towns. So they said, we are blown away and humbled by the work that everyone at the city is undertaking. This represents a city that is no longer satisfied with the status quo. Medicine Hat is showing that our cities can pursue a much different path. You're an inspiration to so many cities that are also ready to shift the broader conversation about growth, development, and public investment. That comes from Edward Erfurt. He's the Director of Community Action at Strong Towns. And so what I've done here is I've crossed out Strong Towns from this approach because for anyone who's participated in this program with us, this has now become the Medicine Hat approach. This is just the way that we conduct business now, by looking through a lens like this. Here's a screenshot of the Strong Towns webpage for the Community Action Lab. They have a very, very competent video producer that creates very excellent content. This is the website they use to entice other municipalities to join the next iteration of the Community Action Lab. Rather than them producing their own video to include on this website, they're using our very own video, using us as an example of, hey, this is how successful you can be. This is what you can implement in your municipality if you participate in this program with us. So there's really nothing else that I can say to explain how successful we've been while working through this program than this here. We're literally the shining example of what you can become. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions, provide any clarity to anything that I've shared.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's, I think the thing that comes to mind is how grateful I am that you're the advocate in the face of this program, because you bring a great deal of energy and excitement and support, and you put a ton of time into it too. So thank you for being the glue so that others can kind of feed off the positive work that you're doing. It's been great. So Mayor Clark and then Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, I also appreciate the work and the presentation. Incremental or small bets is certainly something that, you know, and bottom-up, community-led initiatives that are supported by the city are certainly two things that appeal to me. One of the things that I was hoping to get out of this process, and I believe we were told we would get out of the process, is a calculation of our long-term infrastructure liabilities. And that has yet to come forward, and I'm just wondering, perhaps through the chair to City Manager Mitchell, when we can expect to receive that.
City Manager Mitchell.
Thank you. Through the chair, I will turn it over to Managing Director Bohan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're working on a citywide asset management program. As you all know, we did produce a presentation last fall, which illustrated how much we've got in terms of the value of our assets and how we go about managing, maintaining them, adding to them, and moving forward. Right now, there's an initiative underway to establish an enterprise-wide asset management reporting structure. So that's still forthcoming through corporate services. So we expect something, I don't have a date for that completion, although it's something that's actively in progress. I can assure you, when it comes to infrastructure, we continually monitor and maintain and manage that. With your permission, I'll ask potentially City Manager Mitchell to request a comment from Managing Director Egert.
Through the chair. So as part of corporate services now, we've added a mandate on corporate asset management. And through the chair, we will be, we have a policy that is completed. It's working through administrative committee, and hope to soon be at corporate service, at the next corporate services committee. So stay tuned. You'll have an outline there as to the framework that we're following and the timeline related to that, which is a multi-year timeline to implement that framework. So I'm pretty excited about that. Some great progress there on how we view assets and what is our risk profile related to that.
Thank you, Managing Director Eager and City Manager.
Thank you through the chair, and it's really obviously timely that we are doing asset management because having the data and it'll help council and administration make defensible decisions and know our long-term strategy and our long-term costs. So it isn't that we're not trying to get this done, we're just trying to do it in a proper manner. And having been involved in a few municipalities, start to the finish, asset management is living, breathing document, and it does take time, but once it is, we will be able to determine the risk factors and all the mitigations so that when we bring information to council, it's very factual and data-driven. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. It sounds like the policy and the framework that is in process will allow you to have up-to-date data rather than just data in hindsight. So just to confirm, the council or our corporate services committee will have a policy come forward and we'll have more information about timeline at that meeting. Admin, then corporate services. Okay, thank you so much. Councillor Robbins.
Yeah, thank you, and through the chair. I just wanted to ask a question about two questions. Land use bylaw refresh. I found it really interesting in the context of the three public hearings we had today, and to know there'll be more options on the menu will be lovely. I'm just wondering if there's a sense of timeline of the land use bylaw refresh. I've stumped you, it's late, it's 10:30. John knows the answer. Okay, great.
Through the chair to all of council, the land use bylaw is underway. We've substantially completed numerous sections and we're compiling and reviewing them at this time. The intention is to have that pulled all together by mid-year and to council into the approval process at some point in the fall. I don't have exact timelines, but we are working on it. It will be complete this year.
Okay, great, thank you so
for
much.
the update.
I have a second
Go ahead.
question. Just about the pre-approved plan. So you're starting with garage builds. Is there, what is the timeline of that sort of pilot? I'm gonna call it a pilot project, maybe you're not calling it that, but what's the timeline of that until you think it could expand, or at least analyze whether it should expand?
So through the chair, we have created a first draft of the pre-approved plan. We're at the stage now of knowing how we can implement that within our systems right now. So I don't have an exact date of when it would be implemented. We have a framework and outlines example garage sizes, for example, of what could be approved, what are the different changes, how much someone could customize it, for example. We're in very early stages of that right now.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
And this might be a bit of a cheeky question, but in your book club, when you were reviewing the books and reviewing the chapters, did you have moments or not very many moments, that's why I'm asking, where the people who had reviewed the book said, this is a great idea, but this will never work in Medicine Hat, or this would work, or if it another way? Were there things in the books that you just rejected saying these are never going to work, which then forms your Medicine Hat approach?
Of course. So through the chair, when we're reading these documents here, they're not so much prescriptive as sparking ideas and sparking discussion. So of course, there are things within both books. They're written in a different context as well as our own, that simply, they don't fit here. So there are always examples in both of these books of things that we need to tweak to meet the local context.
Great, thank you so much.
Councillor Hirsch.
Yeah, the timing's kind of impeccable in regards to having this conversation with the land applications that came about and some of the other stuff we talked about tonight. I'm interested, and we've seen it at a national scale, talking about housing. We know it's, in fact, we've heard already the discussion in terms of not a lot of listings in Medicine Hat, that there's a need for the housing. But I'm challenged when tonight, for example, there was observations made in terms of perhaps we're intensifying inappropriately. So I think you looked at the, I'm looking for your observation and maybe your feedback in some of the comments that were made this evening, including maybe leaving some of the land as it sits for maybe not development, and which is, I go back to your commentary on page 284 of the packet where it talks about, number one, energized hubs, looking at mixed use and higher density developments within the urban villages. And then item number 6, which is new life for old spaces, establish land acquisition and de-risking strategy to promote intensification of underutilized sites, which across the street from the Remand Center, we had that discussion this evening, is I'm struggling with the fact that I do believe that we do have an opportunity in terms of intensification, but yet the feedback from the community when you're next door to that development arrives. And I guess I'm just struggling with that, because it's certainly not, you know, the rationale is the fact that Sean, you talk about it all the time, is that we don't need the growth. It's just about how do we look at it from what we have within the brownfield. So I would love your feedback in terms of some of the struggles what we're dealing with right now.
Of course, yeah. So through the chair, what I would refer to first and foremost is probably our municipal development plan. So a lot of the concepts that are in this book are not entirely foreign to the ways that we are already conducting business today. So in our municipal development plan, we identify certain areas of the city that are likely more ripe for more infill development, which areas of our city are likely more appropriate for infill development. So the answer in the MDP are generally areas where there is already municipal infrastructure in place, municipal services in place. So we're talking about along more major roads where there's transit service, for example, where there are opportunities for commercial, quick access to roads and highways and things of that nature. So I'd say that's how we make the decision on where is most appropriate for growth. And I think through some of the amendments that we're proposing through this new land use bylaw and allowing that growth to happen a little bit more incrementally will be a positive shift. So hopefully not experiencing the same types of pushback that we have in the past. Just creates a little bit more certainty for residents, for developers. You know.
Good to go. Okay. Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, and through the chair. First of all, thank you for coming. As the chair of Development and Infrastructure, I had been bugging Pat to get you down here so we could have a more fulsome conversation. So even though council had made a decision to forge ahead, I think the very first time I had a conversation about strong towns was at a downtown collective meeting, and I think it was probably absolutely painful for you. So I'm going to apologize for that first. So, and I was probably the most painful person. So, and I acknowledge that completely and utterly. And I still probably am going to be a little bit. I've never made any bones about it to you. I have reservations. I like some of it. Other things kind of scare me a little bit, and I'm just going to call the elephant in the room, because I think one of the biggest things that I always got, Sean, as soon as you hit strong towns, all this 15-minute cities comes up, and I lose the will to live when I hear that, because I don't want to live in a 15-minute. I love being on the edge of town. I love being able to walk my dogs in nowhere and not see another human. I really do love that. But I also respect that lots of people don't want that, right? They want to be downtown. They want to ride their bike. They want to see lots of people, and I think that's what makes a community, is all the differences. So how do we address because I do hear that in the community, is this 15-minute towns? And I don't think it is. And I think I was misled by that, but tell me. I would rather hear it from you. What is it? What are we looking at?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to address that question. So I invite everyone to visit. We have a very comprehensive Shape Your City page on the topic of strong towns. And on there, we have an FAQ. This question came up so frequently that I put it number one right at the top.
Okay.
Is this 15-minute cities? And it's not. In many ways, Medicine Hat, a 15-minute city is simply a city where you can reach all of the amenities that you use day in and day out within a 15-minute walk or bike ride of where you live. I've just described most areas of Medicine Hat. So we're already there. That's not what this is. This is more about being fiscally conservative with the way we grow. So we can do anything that we'd like. We just need to make sure that we can afford the decisions that we're making. It comes down to that, essentially.
No, and I do appreciate that. I mean, I would like to retire here, so I mean, ultimately, if we don't get our expenses under control, I don't see that happening, obviously. But it's not a this council issue, it's just the way we do things, and it's been leading up to this. It's just the way the world is. So how do we, I had a quick question about the pre-plans. Is that like the Sears catalog of like garages?
Through the chair, yeah,
Okay.
yes, it's essentially that. It would be a catalog of proposed developments, so like
Okay.
row houses, backyard suites that someone could flip through and say, I want this.
Okay.
They could come back that afternoon to pick up the permit.
Wow, that sounds very awesome and less painful than what we're hearing now, right? So I think I appreciate if we're moving in that direction. One of the other things that really caught my mind about what you said was no neighborhood should radically change. How often, when we're looking at these land use developments, are we putting that sentence in the forefront? Like, so is it just a thought, or is it a living, breathing, that is our philosophy?
So through the chair, that is absolutely our philosophy. That's kind of the nature of our work as urban planners, is weighing the pros and cons of different development. Radical change is also something that's open to a lot of interpretation. Radical change for one person may not be radical change for another. So in our profession, we do a real balancing act where we have to balance the wants and needs of immediate neighbors, the broader city, what our infrastructure can accommodate, what we have for electrical capacity, for example, road capacity. So we're balancing so many different things at once, but we do absolutely take into account that we need to make sure that the growth that we accommodate does fit well and is sensitive to the area where it's being proposed.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. A couple more questions, sorry, Chair, is that okay? Thank you. So for the people that are struggling with this concept, what's the best way to get a hold of somebody and talk to somebody and get some real live answers? Because I think what I hear most in the community is that they aren't feeling heard. And it's not just on this issue, it's on every issue. It's like everything we talked about today. They don't feel heard. And I think there's a huge difference between being agreed with and being heard. And I commit to hearing, not agreeing to everything. So, but I do find that I don't know if there is a way, and maybe I'm just dumb and I'll take that, but I couldn't find a way to reach out and ask a question on Strong Towns to somebody like you. And how do we do that?
So specifically on the topic of
Yeah,
strong towns
yeah.
or
So
development
the
in
lovely
general?
lady at the top there has concerns, and I know she does, but how do we address that? Like, I don't want people feeling ignored. I don't want to be ignored, so why would they? But I'm not saying we're going to agree with the answers we get, but we should be able to, because when you came to the Downtown Collective, after you left, I had a bit of a different attitude. I'm still a little opposed to some things, but it's because I get it in my mind that it's a 15-minute town still, right? Even though you've told me 100 times it's not. So how do people get to have this conversation? Because that was helpful for me.
Sure, absolutely. So through the chair, throughout the year, there were very, very many opportunities for the public to participate in the Community Action Lab in a whole host of ways. So I arranged to have our public library get a copy of this book, and they took that a step forward, and they actually bought, I think, 10 copies of it, and they actually created a book club kit. So there were residents in the city that took a whole bag of 10 of these and created a Strong Towns book club. So there was that. We hosted many public events, 3 public events, each with several workshops, many of which were open to the public. So people could attend the public presentations or they could participate in some of these discussions. We held them at the Esplanade. We held them at the library. There's even ways that residents themselves could participate in this, like the example I shared earlier about our local conversation groups. So although this is an initiative that's being led by the city, for lack of a better term, these are principles that people can implement on their own, so with some other residents. But that being said, on that Shape Your City page, I'm essentially an open book. I share everything in there through the FAQ.
Okay.
I have sort of a Strong Towns Journey page that provides an account of everything that we've undertaken throughout this year. And unless I'm mistaken, I think my name and email address is on there. So anyone could reach out to me anytime
Excellent.
to discuss this.
Okay, and good job on the free play. That was fantastic. So,
Through the chair, I'd like to address Councillor Sharp's question with a bit more information. I'd just like to provide some context. Strong Towns is very much an awareness and information piece for Mayor and Council and for the residents of Medicine Hat. I just spoke about the asset management program. We spoke about the assets the municipality has, and we are a service provider. We provide public services for private property, and we collect taxation off that private property. So Strong Towns talks about being fiscally responsible. And this is very, very foundational to informing your policy development. Now, our MDP is a standard piece of legislation that is adopted by Council that aligns with the Municipal Government Act that is similar to other pieces of legislation across almost every Western democracy. This is how we shape our town. And when we present reports to you, we look at that policy, we look at your strategic plan as well, and we align with your intentions. And so when we adopt a municipal development plan, we are articulating what the public interest is, and we work with council, we work with the community through engagement to create that. What Strong Towns is it's an information piece where we are saying that there are ways of looking at development that is more efficient and more beneficial to the functioning of this municipality long-term. We are not suggesting that we go in any particular direction. We are saying that we have to be aware that if we don't have efficient infrastructure, if we don't have an efficient way to run this municipality, it's going to cost us and future generations more money long-term. And there are ways we can make our cities more livable. There are ways we can make our cities more attractive. We can make our cities more appealing to new residents and people who want to relocate their businesses here. Strong Towns is a very powerful information piece. And I'd like to put it in that context. It's not telling you what we should be doing. It's saying that we should be aware of these particular aspects when we are planning and using them to have the best and most fabulous place imaginable. So just a bit of background information. It's not intended to tell you what to do. It's intended to tell you what the consequences of certain actions are, and with that to inform our decision making in a more fulsome manner. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Okay. So no further speakers are on my list. So you're not looking for anything from us tonight. This is just for information. So we will say thank you and appreciate the work that you've done so far and your presentation tonight to update us on where you're at. So thanks so much, Sean.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.